So Marco, tell me a little bit about the range of services that you guys provide at the Central Alabama Fair Housing Center.
We were established in 1995. Our office is in Montgomery, Alabama, and we cover 29 counties in the state. And our job is to ensure that there is equal housing opportunity for all individuals in Central Alabama. We do that regardless to race, color, sexual identity, religion, familial status, and disabilities. How we do that on the three-pronged services you talked about with is investigative testing. If you think of the concept of personal shopping, we send out testers to test locations for discriminatory acts. We also do legal assistance. Legal assistance is mostly coming in. We have 2 in-house lawyers that handle all of the legal assistance by intake. And the biggest prong of that is the education outreach, which is my job. We do that from a different perspective. We have training even from 8 years old, college levels, and then also for municipalities and organizations and individuals.
Can you give me an idea of some of the most recent kinds of complaints or cases that your office has dealt with?
Yes, 2 that come to mind. One of the first cases I can think of, it was a disabled veteran, gentleman that had, of course, a disability. He went to apply for a house, and the property manager told he could not have an ESA, which is an emotional support animal. He could not have an animal on property. So of course he called our office and to file a complaint. That's when legal assistance come in, and then we did a fact check to make sure that there was an allegation of discrimination. And then we followed through with getting help for him to get his documentation from his doctor to show about his disability. And then we contacted the management, property management, and then we talked with them, and they actually did reasonable accommodation for him, which basically allowed him to have his ESA animal. And the other case that comes to mind, it was an elderly woman, and her daughters lived with her in an apartment, and they were her caregivers. You can have caregivers, and they also fall under the fair housing law for the name of the person on the lease. They wanted reasonable accommodation because their mother had handicaps about getting in and out of their living area or the living apartment. We had contacted the property management. They went forward with helping us getting reasonable accommodation. They wanted to install a handicap ramp. They were actually open to moving into a completely different other apartment. However, and the reason I talk about this case is the family denied the reasonable accommodation. Yes, so we still went through the processes and helped them, but unfortunately we had to close the case because the person put in the complaint has the right to deny or accept our services.
So if somebody owns a property and the tenant would like to install a ramp, does the property owner have to pay for that ramp, or is that the expense of the prospective tenant?
Certain situations inside of the facility or inside their living space, if there are changes that are done inside, sometimes it is up to the leasee to particularly make those changes at their own cost.
Well, I think I was always under the understanding that the property owner had to allow them to make the accommodations, but not at their expense. So I guess that's a little different than
Yes.
I'd always thought.
It's very specific. So each case is a little different, or each case, a lot of them are the same, but a lot of them are very different. And that's why most people think about the time frame of a complaint. It's very, very sporadic.
I attended an advanced fair housing workshop several years ago for instructors because I'm also a real estate instructor, and this was probably even 10 years ago, and they said for the first time disability had exceeded race in the number of fair housing complaints and situations. So is that what you're seeing in Alabama?
Because with sex or gender, which is one of the classes covered, now sexual identity is included in that, more specifically for LGBT plus community. Inside of that, we're seeing more cases with that now. We're also seeing more cases with the disability because more people are filing for disabilities and most people are finding that they're finding themselves in these eviction situations, and then they all of a sudden want to use their disability.
I see.
Yeah. So I believe personally that that's why some of those cases are going up.
So what is the time frame or the process for somebody who feels like they've been discriminated against and wants to file a complaint?
Okay. More specifically, there's no time frame for a complaint. However, there's a process to file the complaint. There are two ways an individual can file an allegation of discrimination. They can call our office at 334-263-4663, or they can go to our website at www.centralalabamafairhousing.org. In that process, basically, we need contact information. If you call, make sure you speak very clearly so we understand how to contact you back. And also, more specifically, leave the contact information on the call. If you go online to file the complaint, there is an online form that you complete. It's asking about your name, information, and also you need to put in, there's a comment block to put in the allegation that you're speaking of. Now, that will be picked up by intake officer at our Fair Housing office, and then they will call the individual back to, of course, acquire more facts about it and follow up. We call that intake. And then that process, the direction change at that point is either going to go to legal assistance, the prong, or either it's going to be a referral prong to another agency that could help them.
So we had a situation this year that I'd like to share with you and get your feedback on. One of our agents was working with an investor who was purchasing properties to be used as a group home for folks who were in recovery. And they met with quite a bit of resistance in the communities where the investor wanted to put the group homes for these folks. And even our agent received quite a lot of harassment from other agents and people in the community. And it elevated to the point where even the residents in the community pulled together money to try to entice this investor not to purchase in this community. Can you speak to that for me and tell me what kind of protection do people in recovery have under the Fair Housing Act?
That's a very interesting situation. What I can speak to is the fair housing law part of it. It really sounds like a lot of that falls on the Department of Justice side, because they have some very, very strict guidelines in relation to group homes and recovery in specific areas. From the fair housing aspect, group homes are covered under Fair Housing Act. Even more specifically, individuals in recovery in group homes have fair housing laws as well. So no state or local entity can discriminate for an individual living in a group home or against group homes.
So what other information or message would you like to get out during Fair Housing Month?
We encourage individuals, particularly our real estate professionals, to stay committed to educating individuals about housing law. Stay dedicated to ending housing discrimination. Like many places in this state, Dothan has many impediments according to fair housing law. There could be limitation in education and resources. There is zoning impacts according to persons with disabilities. There is a discrepancy as far as cost and condition of housing that is available. And one of the other things we've come across is there is an underrepresentation of race and ethnic minorities in real estate professionals, lending professionals, and the financial professionals. So if anything could be done to eradicate those impediments, that's part of the fight. We would like you to continue to end discrimination, housing discrimination anywhere.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, we're certainly trying to do our part.
Great.
And we're encouraging our agents. We have a number of agents who have achieved their At Home with Diversity certification, and we try to bring awareness to them every day. And we have a very diverse team of real estate professionals in our office. But I tell my agents and my students, real estate professionals are the front line. We're the front line. And if it doesn't begin with us, then it's a tough road.
That is true. That is exactly true.
Well, thank you so much for being with us, and we'll look forward to partnering with you in the future.
All right. Thank you, Susan, for having me.